The town of Canyon Ridge had always been quiet. The kind of quiet that felt normal during the day, but unsettling after dark. For years, nothing unusual had ever happened there. People knew each other. Doors were rarely locked. Nights passed without incident. Until one evening changed everything. It was late autumn. The air carried a cold edge, and the sky had already turned dark when Caroline noticed something was wrong. Her daughters, Evelyn and June, were missing. At first, it didn't feel real. She searched the house, calling their names again and again, expecting them to answer from another room or from outside. But there was nothing. No sound. No response. Panic set in quickly. Within minutes, neighbors were called. Within an hour, the entire town was searching. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Voices echoed across empty fields and narrow roads. The sheriff's department joined in, organizing search teams that moved deeper into the surrounding areas, including the dense forest near Thunder Valley. But the forest gave nothing back. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Search efforts grew weaker, hope began to fade, and slowly, the town returned to its routine. But Caroline never did. For her, time had stopped the night her daughters disappeared. Rumors began to spread. Some people said the girls had wandered too far into the forest. Others believed something darker had taken them. There were even whispers about Thunder Valley, stories that had existed long before the disappearance. Stories no one used to take seriously. Not until now. Years passed. The case went cold. Files were closed. Search teams were disbanded. And eventually, even the town stopped speaking about it. But not completely. Because some nights, when the wind moved through the valley just right, people claimed they could hear something. Faint. Distant. Like echoes of voices that didn't belong. 13 years later, everything changed. A storm rolled into Canyon Ridge without warning. Thunder cracked across the sky, rain poured heavily, and the quiet town was once again swallowed by darkness. It was the kind of night people preferred to stay indoors. But that night, something came back. Near the edge of the forest, two figures appeared. Small, still, and barely visible through the rain. By the time they were found, no one in Canyon Ridge was ready for what they would discover. The two figures were alive. But something was wrong. Very wrong. When the police reached the edge of the forest, they found them standing in complete silence. Evelyn and June. After 13 years, they hadn't aged. Not even a day. Their clothes were the same. Their faces were the same. And their eyes, empty. They didn't cry. They didn't speak. They didn't even react when their mother arrived. Caroline ran toward them, collapsing to her knees, holding them tightly. But the girls didn't hug her back. They just stood there, still, cold, watching nothing. Doctors were called immediately. The girls were taken to the hospital for examination. The entire town waited for answers. But no one was prepared for what the doctors would say. Physically, they were perfectly fine. No injuries. No signs of malnutrition. No aging. Nothing. It was as if they had disappeared and returned within minutes. Not years. But mentally, something was missing. They didn't respond to basic questions. They didn't recognize people, not even their own mother. And then, On the second night, June spoke. One sentence. Soft. Barely audible. But enough to freeze everyone in the room. He told us not to speak. That sentence changed everything. The investigation reopened immediately. Police began questioning the girls again, this time carefully, slowly, trying not to scare them, trying to understand. "Who told you that?" one officer asked. June didn't answer. She just looked toward the window. Evelyn, however, reacted differently. Her breathing changed. Her hands tightened. And then she whispered something even more disturbing. "He's still here." The room went silent. That night, security was increased around the hospital. Officers guarded every entrance. Cameras were checked. Windows were locked. No one was taking any chances. But around 3 a.m., something happened. The cameras in the girls' room stopped working for exactly 47 seconds. When the footage returned, both girls were sitting upright in their beds, staring directly at the camera, at the exact same time. And then they smiled. Not a normal smile. Not relief. Not happiness. Something else. Something wrong. The next morning, everything escalated. One of the nurses refused to enter the room again. She claimed that during the night, she heard whispering. Not one voice, but many, all coming from the same place. The girls' room. When asked what the voices were saying, she hesitated, then finally answered. They were counting. The hospital staff tried to stay calm, tried to explain it logically. Stress, fear, imagination. But the sheriff wasn't convinced. He ordered a full search of the forest near Thunder Valley, the same place where the girls had been found. What they discovered there would change the case forever. Deep inside the forest, hidden beneath layers of dirt and roots, they found it. An entrance. Old. Man-made. Forgotten. A tunnel. Cold air flowed out from inside, carrying a smell that no one could describe. And carved into the stone above it were symbols. Not random. Not natural. Intentional. And at the center of those symbols, there was a message. One that made even the most experienced officers step back. Do not let them leave again. The girls weren't lost. They were kept. And whatever had taken them might not be finished yet. The tunnel was real. And it wasn't empty. The search team stood at the entrance, staring into complete darkness. Flashlights barely touched the walls. The air felt heavy, like something inside was breathing. "Stay together," the sheriff ordered. No one argued. Step by step, they moved inside. The ground was damp. The walls were covered in strange markings. Symbols, identical to the ones above the entrance. And then they heard it. A faint sound. Deep inside the tunnel. Not footsteps. Not wind. Whispers. The team froze. "Did you hear that?" one officer asked. No one answered, because they all did. The whispers weren't random. They were synchronized, like multiple voices speaking the same words at once. And slowly, they became clearer. "Don't let them leave." Back at the hospital, things were getting worse. Evelyn had stopped sleeping. She would sit upright for hours, staring at the corner of the room. June, on the other hand, had started drawing. At first, it seemed harmless, just shapes, lines, circles. But then the nurses noticed something. The drawings were maps, detailed, accurate, and they all pointed to the same place, the tunnel. When the sheriff saw them, his face went pale. "How do you know this place?" he asked softly. June didn't look at him, didn't blink. "They showed us." "Who showed you?" Silence. Then both girls spoke together. "He did." The deeper the team went into the tunnel, the colder it became. Their flashlights flickered. Their radios started failing. And then they found something. Footprints. Small. Barefoot. Dozens of them. All leading deeper inside. But none coming back. "Keep moving," the sheriff said, though his voice no longer sounded confident. Minutes later, the tunnel opened into a chamber, large, circular, and in the center there was a chair, old, wooden, bolted to the ground. Around it, chains, and on the walls, more symbols. But these were different, darker, more aggressive. Then one officer pointed his light upward. Everyone looked, and what they saw made one of them drop his flashlight. The ceiling was covered in handprints, hundreds of them, small hands, children's hands, pressed into the stone, as if they had tried to climb out. The truth was finally starting to reveal itself. Back in the hospital, the girls changed again. This time, violently. June began screaming in the middle of the night. Not words, not sentences, just raw, terrified sound. Evelyn tried to hold her down, but something strange happened. June wasn't looking at her. She was staring at the ceiling. "No, no, don't take him, please." The doctors rushed in, tried to calm her down. But then she said something that stopped everyone. "He's choosing another one." Silence filled the room. "Who is?" a nurse whispered. June's body went still. Her voice dropped, and in a tone that didn't sound like hers, she answered, "The one in the tunnel." At that exact moment, miles away, inside the underground chamber, one of the officers disappeared. No sound, no struggle. 1 second he was there. The next, gone. And from deep within the darkness, the whispers returned. Louder this time. Clearer. Closer. "You were not supposed to find us." The chamber fell into chaos. Where did he go? Flashlights jerked wildly across the walls, beams shaking with panic. The officer who had been standing near the edge of the circle was gone. No footsteps, no scream, nothing, just absence. The sheriff raised his hand, forcing everyone to stop moving. "Quiet." The word echoed, and then they heard it again, closer this time. A breath, not behind them, not ahead, but among them. One of the deputies slowly turned his light toward the chair in the center. For a moment, nothing. Then the chains moved, just slightly, as if something had shifted its weight. Every instinct screamed at them to leave. But the sheriff stepped forward. carefully, drawn by something he didn't understand. On the seat of the chair, there were fresh marks, scratches, deep, desperate, like someone had tried to break free. Recently, back at the hospital, Evelyn finally spoke. Not in whispers, not in fragments, but clearly. He doesn't like when you go down there. The room froze. The sheriff, now on the radio, listened as the doctor repeated her words. "Ask her who," he said. The doctor hesitated, then turned back. "Evelyn, who doesn't like it?" She looked directly at him. For the first time, there was emotion in her eyes. Fear. Real fear. The one who keeps the time. A cold silence followed. "What does that mean?" the doctor asked. Evelyn's lips parted slightly. And then, "All the children, they don't age." The doctor's grip tightened. "Why?" Evelyn whispered. "Because he doesn't let them leave." Inside the tunnel, things were getting worse. The radios stopped working completely. One by one, flashlights began to dim. The team tried to retrace their steps. But something was wrong. The tunnel had changed. Paths that weren't there before now existed. Walls felt different. Longer. Narrower. Endless. "We're going in circles," one officer muttered. "No," the sheriff replied quietly. "We're being kept here." And then a sound echoed from the chamber behind them. A child's voice. Soft. Crying. Everyone turned. "Did you hear that?" The sheriff didn't answer, because he recognized the voice. It sounded like June. At the hospital, June woke up suddenly. Her body jerked upward. Eyes wide. Terrified. "They're still inside." She grabbed Evelyn's arm tightly. "They didn't get out." The nurse tried to calm her down. "You're safe." "No," June screamed. "They went too far." At that exact moment, deep inside the tunnel, the crying stopped, replaced by something else. Laughter. Low. Layered. Wrong. The sheriff slowly turned around. His flashlight flickered one last time, then died. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that darkness, a voice spoke. Not whispered. Not distant. Right beside him. "You brought more." At the hospital, June woke up suddenly. Her body snapped upright, breath sharp and uneven. "They're still inside." Her fingers dug into Evelyn's sleeve, trembling violently. "They didn't get out." The nurse rushed forward, trying to steady her. "You're safe now, it's okay." "No," June screamed, her voice cracking. "They went too far." The room fell into chaos. Machines beeped faster. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Evelyn didn't move. She just stared ahead, listening. And then, very quietly, she said, "He knows they're there." Silence followed. Heavy. Unavoidable. Miles away. Inside the tunnel. The crying stopped. Instantly. As if it had never existed. Then, laughter. Low. Layered. Not one voice, but many. The sheriff turned slowly, his fading flashlight barely cutting through the dark. And then it died. Complete darkness. A voice spoke. Close. Too close. "You brought more." Part 13. No one moved. No one breathed. The darkness inside the tunnel felt alive. The sheriff reached for his sidearm, his hand steady, but his pulse wasn't. "Stay together," he whispered. But the words felt useless now, because something had already separated them. A faint glow appeared ahead. Not from a flashlight. Not from any device. It was coming from the chamber. Soft, pale, pulsing, like a heartbeat. They moved toward it, slowly, against every instinct, and when they stepped back into the chamber, the chair was no longer empty. Something was sitting there. At first, it looked like a person, small, still, head lowered, hair covering the face. One of the deputies whispered, "Is that a child?" The figure lifted its head, and the room changed. Not physically, but something in the air shifted, like reality had bent, just slightly. Its face wasn't right, not fully human, not fully anything, and its eyes didn't reflect the light. They absorbed it. "You weren't supposed to come back," it said. Its voice didn't match its size. Too deep, too layered, like multiple voices speaking through one mouth. The sheriff forced himself to speak. "Where are the others?" The thing smiled. Slowly. "They're here." The walls around them began to move. Not literally, but the handprints, those hundreds of small handprints, started pressing outward, as if something behind them was trying to get through. Back at the hospital, Evelyn suddenly stood up. Her head turned toward the window. "He's opening it." June started crying again, but this time, not in fear, in recognition. And deep beneath the earth, the chamber walls cracked, just slightly, just enough for something to begin coming out.